We're going to get started with the meeting. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rudy Sukol, I'm the Public Works Director here at Mount Lebanon. We'll kick off the second meeting of the Mobility and Transportation Advisory Board. First thing we'll do is, I guess I'm calling the meeting to order because we don't have a chairperson yet. And we'll start with the roll call. Seth Davis, not here. Charlotte Ford,
Here.
Lisa Herm,
Here.
Aaron Lauf,
Here.
Aaron Malavite Bab,
Here.
Elizabeth McCabe,
Here.
Paul O'Rourke is absent, and John Reagan is here virtually. John?
Here.
Thank you. And Brooke Webb.
Here.
Okay. Moving on to the first item. As I mentioned, and Commissioner Flynn sent an email out. We would like to nominate and elect a chair and a co-chair for the 2024 season. So I'll open it up to the members to have a conversation about that. If anyone's interested, I believe that Mr. Davis had sent an email indicating he had some interest in the chair position.
Yes, I received that email and I'm on board for supporting Seth as the chair.
Okay.
Need a motion.
Okay.
Yeah, the motion.
Motion, second.
I'll second. I'll second.
Okay, thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Davis is the chair for the 2024 season. Now we need to elect the vice chair. That was easy. Let's do it again. Anyone interested in the vice chair?
Else not here?
Very dangerous to not attend the meeting.
I like that idea.
Gonna get attendance up.
What word is he in?
Seth is in one.
One.
I think.
I believe, yeah, he's on Hillcrest, so I believe that is one, yeah.
What does it involve? I'm already asking a question.
Well, you're gonna chair this meeting, whoever you are.
Yeah.
Other than that, not a whole lot except supporting the chair when they're not
Okay.
available.
I can put my name unless anybody else has.
We take volunteers too.
Yeah.
Okay,
Nominations, is that someone, if no one's complaining, everybody just put forward a motion.
there you go. Okay, we get a motion. Okay, second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Ms. Ford, you are the vice chair for the 2024 season.
All right.
Thank you. All right, ready to go.
Yeah. Now yours.
Okay.
You
Now-
take item number 3.
Yeah, no,
Okay. So, did we you called to order already?
yes, ma'am.
All right, does anybody have anything regarding the minutes? I'd like to talk about the meeting minutes from April 2nd, 2024 meeting.
Motion to
Change.
approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting's approved. And next item we have our citizens' comments.
I would say generally speaking, the process would be call people in the room one at a time. And then, and generally we try to limit to 5 minutes. Again, you're the chair, so you have some discretion, but you know, that's generally the rule. And then I would make sure we're always asking for people online as well.
And you should mention your name and your address as well.
No problem. And I'm gonna be up here for at least 30 minutes. No, I'm kidding. About 30 seconds. My name is Laura West. I'm a resident on 55 Roycroft. I've been here for about 5 years. Finn is my next door neighbor. He's gonna speak next. We're just here to express concerns about the speed of traffic on Roycroft in particular. I think people are using it as a thoroughfare to get to the large apartment complex at the end of the road, as well as to get to Connor Road. I'm relatively new to the street. I've been there about 5 years, but I've spoken with our neighbors across the street, the Krolikowskis, and down the road, the Bests, who have collectively lived on the road for close to 30 years. And they said it's just gotten completely out of control over time. I think they petitioned actually 20 years ago to get speed bumps similar to Orchard. And that was declined, and so we got a watch children are playing sign, but it doesn't seem like anyone's paying attention to that. I'm a pediatrician at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, so obviously I see a skewed part of the population, very sick kids, but I can tell you, we see a lot of horrible traffic-related accidents in the PICU every year, and I have a 3 and a 2-year-old, and we're frankly scared to let them play in the front yard. I think people on average are probably going 40 to 50 easy on our street. So we just wanted to bring it to the board that we were hoping to consider having some speed bumps. I know when I go down Orchard, which has 2 of them, it does seem to really help, and there's a lot of kids playing out on that street. We have a lot of young families on our road as well. So I think this is a collective concern.
Next, Finn.
I would just, my name is Finn Dawson, I'm 14, and my address is 51 Roycroft Avenue, 15228. And I'd just like to say that I've definitely seen a lot of people not obeying the speed limit. I think the fastest I've ever seen someone go 60 or 70 miles per hour. And a couple of times I've felt a little scared about playing just out in my front yard just because of how fast the cars were going. And especially since there's a turn like right before you get to like kind of my area. And I could definitely see someone turning at that speed and may not being able to turn back and just running straight into a house or something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Can we ask questions of data related stuff at this point, or would you? I've not been a member of the board.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so my question would be, Mike, do we have any recent studies in that particular area that we could refer to, or we could ask the police department to potentially put up some devices to give us some current data?
That, you could do that. Yeah, I was just looking to see where it was since I was, 2014 on the traffic board and dealing with this stuff, we have not had any, data collection that was requested for Roycroft. Yeah, so I don't.
That seems like a good first step to at least see.
I think if we're gonna stick to the kind of the rule book that was set up, the request will have to go to the manager. So that's kind of I'm the conduit between the board and the manager and the commission. So we can take notes and, I think that the final approval has to come from the municipal manager, so.
And then, so we're obviously recommending board. Do we need to make a motion to recommend that you take that to the manager? for
I
his
think that would
consideration?
probably be appropriate, sure.
I would make a motion to have the police department as an initial step, utilize some devices. And for those of you folks that aren't aware, police department has some signs they can either hang on telephone poles or they can put the trailer out, which is a little bit more visual, in terms of there being a big trailer on the side of the road that flashes speed. It's pretty, it works to sort of slow people down because it's a big giant trailer with a big flashing sign on it. But there is ways to collect data through a telephone pole mounted sign. So typically that's left to the discretion of the police department, whichever device would fit best in that particular area. It gives us some data. It's an initial step. If that device collects enough data to show that there's an issue, then I think the next steps typically with Gateway to do a more official speed study where they can put down some other more devices that can collect some better data, and then move on from there. But I would recommend the initial
I
step.
was gonna say, so tonight's probably a good night if you stick around. My presentation is gonna be on that policy and the process that neighborhoods and residents currently have to go through for traffic calming. So maybe that's a next step based on my presentation, but
Right.
if you want to have the police put the stuff out there, technically that's kind of step
Yeah.
one, the screening data.
I would make a
Which,
motion to recommend that the manager consider having the police department put the.
Okay, yeah,
speed-
and it's not a huge, it's more time involved with the police staff to actually put those devices out, collect that data and analyze it and share that with our group and the traffic engineer.
Not the labor Robert's Rules of Order, but we have a motion on the floor. If we have a second,
Second the
then we
motion.
can have discussion.
And just out of curiosity, how long generally do we do the study? How long do we keep the device on 2 weeks typically.
Anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks, yeah. It's more than enough data to be representative.
It'd be nice if we could do it before the end of school, just because it seems like that would increase traffic while school's in, but.
Do you find
Yeah,
that
that might be.
do we, there's been a motion, so all in favor?
Well, we can
Are we-
finish. We had a second,
Discussion? Okay.
finish
Yeah.
discussion.
What is the speed limit?
25 would be on most residential streets are 25 miles an hour.
Is the presentation you're going to give tonight on the neighborhood traffic management program? Okay, and so where you have to have 20 household residents sign a petition, and then that is the step, okay. Not to jump ahead and steal your thunder, I was just wondering because I was, yes, okay.
This motion is just to collect some data, not to go the
Yeah.
route of
Okay.
traffic calming, just to collect some initial data to determine,
Okay,
is there probably
Okay.
a speed problem that's worth more consideration for
okay,
a traffic management? Kind of the first step in the process, just to have some official, data. Obviously, folks live there, they say there's a lot of speeding vehicles on the street, we believe them, but we need to back that up with some data to
Mhm.
show it's worthy of moving forward with some additional consideration.
Is there any consideration taken when you use the trailer? Because I know that actually tends to slow people down, so I'm curious if it really collects valid data.
It's more of a warning device and a data collection device, because of the size of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to kind of go around it.
Right.
So that kind of slows people down as
Right.
well. But the telephone pole mounted devices tend to be a little bit more discreet, collect some better data. But I think we want to be careful, like I know we mentioned, hopefully that could be done before the end of school, but at least from my recollection of things, how things occur, sometimes those devices are promised out a few weeks, maybe even a month in advance, depending on how backed up the department is. So we can't always say we want it this exact time frame. Sometimes it has to get on the list of areas that have been complained about. So just to control expectations on that,
And if I recall correctly, we did buy more of those recently. So there is more capacity, but still, it is a limited resource.
The pole mounted ones.
At any given time, you know where they are, do there some? If
The,
there are
the
ones out
traffic
there?
unit from the police department is responsible for deploying those and collecting the data from them, yes.
Any other comments? Move to a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Other citizens today?
Step up to the podium.
Hi guys, how are y'all doing? My name is Justice. I am a new resident to Pennsylvania and Mount Lebanon. Moved here about a month ago from Tampa, Florida, so appreciate you having me here. It's a wonderful place. We're blessed with geography that constrains drivers to speeds lower than I have witnessed in residential areas in Florida because they're very flat and very straight. And that leads to people driving very quickly. So first thing I wanted to say is, appreciate you letting me be here tonight. And basically my number one concern is that I live on 254 Academy Avenue. There is an intersection between Marietta Place and Academy Avenue. There's no stop sign at the end of Marietta Place. I almost got ran over like a few days ago. And people on Academy, I don't think people are actually doing like 40, like 50, 60 miles an hour. It's kind of deceptive with these hills, how fast the cars are going, but they're at least going like 35. So people are speeding, particularly where I live, Academy and Cedar, very high traffic, through traffic areas, people are speeding. But yeah, we really need a stop sign at the end of Marietta Place. That's a three-way intersection where cars are going 35 miles an hour regularly. So that can lead to an accident pretty fast. Or a pedestrian being run over. But last other suggestion would be that perhaps a cheap way to kind of visually narrow the roads is like I would implement more crosswalks specifically in areas of, like you guys have mentioned, high flow of through traffic and high speed traffic, and just having markings on the road generally tends to slow people down because it visually makes the road look a little smaller, but that was kind of my main 2 cents, so I appreciate you guys having me here tonight, and look forward to seeing you guys soon. All right?
Welcome to the community.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Can I
What's
ask
your
you a
last
quick
name,
question?
please?
ROLOFF.
And were you pedestrian when you said you almost got hit, or were you
Yes.
driving? Okay, thanks.
So on that one, can we make a recommendation, the manager consider Gateway, look at that intersection for the placement of a stop sign?
You're talking on Marietta approaching Academy at the two-way
I
intersection.
was just,
Yeah.
and there's no stop signs on any of them.
No,
Yeah.
So we have those throughout. the municipality. Yeah.
Some people stop there. Like I used to stop there because I lived there, but if you don't know the area. you kind
Yeah,
of-
there's not a crosswalk there either.
Yeah, no crosswalk either.
Yeah, I bicycle through there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
So I would make that motion, make a recommendation to the manager to ask Gateway to take a look at that intersection for safety improvements.
Second that.
Any more discussions on that one? Take a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Evening, everyone. My name is Marty Basic. I live on 201 Outlook Drive. I'm on the Finance Advisory Board, and I thought people just didn't come to these meetings, but turns out talking about pensions is boring, so they don't even set up chairs for us back there, so this is new to me. I'm here to talk today about a policy that I'm proposing. So bear with me. I think a lot of this touches on what people have said today and a lot of the concerns in the community as a whole. I consider it a sort of antidote of sorts. Justice just brought up crosswalks, and it was actually a great segue into this. So if you've heard of tactical urbanism, this is a bit of that, but sort of a Mount Lebanon spin on it. And so sort of the problem at hand is, I think we're all aware that Mount Lebanon streets could use some work. Mount Lebanon Magazine mentioned as of March 15th this year, they investigated 5 driver pedestrian crashes, 3 in the span of 2 weeks. There's been a significant amount of research and studies that have happened across the United States in the past couple of decades, and we know how to slow streets down. It comes a lot more down to design of the streets versus actual enforcement, and we don't entirely have the resources to do enforcement on all those streets. So my recommendation is we enable the community. We're really lucky here to have a community that cares very deeply. You've heard people speak tonight about how much they care. This is an effort to enable that, the passion and the action behind the community to expand the resources. The municipal only has finite amount of time. They have a finite amount of money. If we're able to unlock the capacity of the community as a whole and enable people to modify the streets as in a safe way, in this policy, I feel like I'm kind of jumping around, but bear with me. I think we can kind of expand on what we're able to do as a community instead of just having the constraint of the municipal, who does a great job and obviously cares very deeply about this. So the proposal in essence, I don't know if Rudy had sent it over or not. There was a bit of confusion earlier last week. I can send it later. This is essentially a proposal to allow residents to take actions that they see fit to improve the safety of the streets within reason. So this includes a formal proposal process that has parameters of things like design, making sure that we maintain the character. We're not just like painting crosswalks everywhere in the neighborhoods. Adding potentially flower boxes. I think that residents know their neighborhoods best and know what the needs are best. And so enabling this policy to allow residents to request changes to their neighborhoods. Like there's a crossing right across from my house where students pass daily, and essentially like it could use a crosswalk, and I think that'd be fantastic. And I'd be willing to use my money and time and resources to paint that myself if the community enabled that. And I think that's just one example of the broader initiative that could happen. Checking how much time I've left. In terms of this policy, I think like coming from another advisory board, I know that we're trying to satisfy the goals of the comprehensive plan. That's kind of like our North Star as boards. And I think that this potentially satisfies a couple for this board. I think that this kind of ties in, I know we're gonna talk about the NTMP later, but I think that this helps with the goals of devising traffic solutions on a neighborhood level for methodical implementation that's from the comprehensive plan. I think this fits very neatly into that. So at a neighborhood level, enabling residents and neighbors to create safer streets in a way that they know is best for their neighborhoods. Additionally, creating clear, simple public information, explaining the process to make it easy for people to participate, which is essentially like sort of the policy that I'm proposing, where there's a standardized form that allows people to fill this out, explain how much money they expect this to take, how much time they expect it to take, and exactly how they plan on making the improvements to their streets. I foresee the kind of original phase of this not using municipal money and using residents' money, and kind of seeing how that goes and having a separate process if people want to request funds from the municipal. That's kind of like a second phase to the proposal process. Ideally, this is a like cheap and easy way for us to enable more changes to the streets and make them safer without using the existing municipal funds and resources. So I hope you'll consider it. I don't know exactly what the process is for like proposing a policy like this. I expect it to be iterative. I definitely want a lot of different people involved. I'm not an expert in this space at all, so hope this is collaborative and hope that we can take this forward. Thank you.
Courtney, I have a question.
Yeah.
And so, are you aware of any, like, is this based on another community or of other like, examples where?
Yeah, great question. That's something I forgot to add, actually. So in the policy that I'll send out later, there's a precedent for a bunch of communities across the United States doing just this exact same thing and seeing a lot of success with it, where they have a standardized form that goes through the municipality and there's a standard approval process. And so they have seen a good deal. It's like municipal, similar in size to us, and kind of like random places like that. It's the South that I wouldn't expect. But yeah, there is precedent for other townships doing this.
One question. And
Yeah.
right, because I've not seen this specific thing you're talking about. but
Yeah.
Is there a review stage once once your ideas are submitted? Is there a review stage by the traffic engineer to make
Yes.
sure that it meets safety standards?
Yeah, exactly. So I envisioned it being, the citizen submits the request, it goes to this mobility board for overlooking it, and then also the traffic engineer to have a hand in exactly what you said, making sure that it's actually safe and not endangering anyone further, which is kind of the opposite of the goal. So, yeah, absolutely. I think it would involve a traffic engineer as well.
John has a question. Okay. I'm not.
Not so much a question as discussion. Is my hand still up?
Yep. Oh,
Look
you
down.
now, now it's up again.
There
Now
we
it's down.
Very good. Okay. I'm intrigued by this because I had actually asked Commissioner Grella something along these lines a few months back, not necessarily with regard to mobility, but just like basically like, hey, I have an engineering license. If I and some of my neighbors got together, could we do something? And I was wondering if it could basically be like a permit process. Like you get a permit to modify your property. What if you could get a permit to modify something that is technically owned by the municipality? So I am intrigued. I don't know how feasible this is to set up, but.
It's interesting. I not that I'm an attorney, but I would have concerns about liability. Anything we would put on the street, the proper approvals, the proper review, I think this falls in line similar to almost like the sidewalks, right? Because we asked for contributions from residents that want sidewalks added. It's interesting. It's
Yeah.
definitely an interesting approach. And I can think of a couple of examples. I know of a particular street in Peters Township that the residents got together and added some speed display signs in a certain block of a street. Because it's on the way to Peters Lake where we regularly go, my family and I regularly go to kayak, and I notice the signs every time, but they mounted them in their own yards, paid for them themselves and put them in the yard. How they went about getting that approved through the municipality, I don't think that there was much of a process. From what I understand, but it does occur, you know, when you have a group of residents that have concern and want to do something about it.
I think it depends on what it is, you know, you see
Correct.
these little yellow men out there, and that does a lot to slow traffic down when
Yeah.
people see those things, they really stick out, and so, you know, it can be from one extreme to the other, so I guess my point is, it just depends on what it is, and like you said, there's liability and exposure, for the municipality, depending on, you know, if someone were to have an accident or something like that.
Yeah, like you mentioned, flower box, and my one thought I had in my head, if somebody crashes into that flower box, now who's liable, you know what I mean, for that?
Or landscaping, who can,
Correct,
you know, so, I think it warrants further discussion, and at least, like, I'm intrigued by it too.
I can share the document that he had and gave to me with the group, and, you know, for further discussion. I just thought that it would be appropriate to probably talk about our existing policy
Yeah.
first before
Yeah.
we start implementing or expanding upon and I knew the presentation was gonna take place tonight.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to come back and have a further discussion on this?
Yeah, of course.
John had his hand raised again.
I mean, maybe if we have, sorry, I can't hear exactly who's saying everything, but I think it was Rudy said that we have a document to look at too, but so maybe it's mentioned there, but one way I could see something like this happening is if it's like a zoning thing and you just state in the zoning code that people can do things to the street in front, like a flower box. You could just lay out what's allowed and people can do it or not. And then that's might be a little less, a little lower friction than a review process every time something is done.
I think initially I'll take it back to the manager, and I'm sure that the solicitor would have to be involved and through the review process and before anything is even suggested or move forward, so.
A lot of this can also be done without physical barriers through visual cueing and markings. I just happened to be at the Pennsylvania Parking Association conference, which is now the Pennsylvania Mobility and Parking Association. And they did do a presentation where various visual cueing can have the same effects that you're speaking of.
So, a couple things. I agree. Tactical urbanism is a fantastic and interesting opportunity, right? We have a built infrastructure. Changing it is expensive, it's slow, there's a lot of work. You don't have enough officers to put one on every corner and police traffic. Creating opportunities for residents to engage on their street, I agree is very compelling. I tend to be kind of in the middle here between, you know, hey, do anything you want and no. There is a lot of controls that do need to be put in place, in my opinion, on this type of exercise. Yeah, again, if we're going to narrow a lane, you know, does that mean you can paint something? Maybe. What can you paint? I don't know. Do we need to have rules? Maybe. Yeah, the principal is nodding. There's the sign. Right? So there's lots of different variables here. Can you put a planter, you know, this way? Maybe. Can you put it that way? Of course not. There's so many variables that have to be thought about in this. So as a general rule, what I would suggest to the group, you know, is put forward what you guys want to see, right? If this is a topic you as a board want to pick it up, dig into it, look at other policies, right? Take what he is bringing forward, go do your own research, right? See what else is out there, see what other examples, right? There are lots of really cool examples of what communities have done on their streets, right? Painted really cool, you know, art, you know, painted crosswalks, you know, intersections in bright ways. Really interesting things have happened. If other communities have done it, we can do it, but we need to think through the policies And what is the policy that you guys want to propose? You get through that process, you vote on it, you all agree, nod your heads, then it goes to commission. If commission likes the direction, we're not gonna say yes to it right away, we're gonna say, yes, staff needs to pick it up and look at it, which will be the point at which Rudy should take it to the manager, and resources need to be aligned, because then solicitor needs to be engaged, police need to be fully engaged, right? There's a whole bunch of mechanics that need to be worked out. Understanding that the intent of where you're trying to go with the policy you propose, right, is what we're working under, right? That is what the direction of the commission at that point. So the process is, at this point, we are coming up with ideas. Not asking staff to do anything. This is your forum right now. Once you get to a place, if you guys collectively say, we want to pick this up and carry it and propose a policy, you have every opportunity to do that. Do the best policy you want to do. And then recognize that it will go through commission, it will go to staff, staff will tighten it up. Then you guys can opine on it again, but then it goes to commission to actually implement or vote on, if that makes sense.
Would that be a motion though, or we're just kind of.
At this point, this is just a discussion. You don't have to pick up anything.
I would think at this point, we take the documents that he's gonna supply to us, we each take the time to review those.
Yeah.
And this could be old business at our next meeting.
Yeah.
We go back and talk about what we were able to review and come up with some additional ideas about how to move it forward potentially.
Agree. Yeah. Right. Marty, what was your last name?
Basic. B-A-C-I-K, it's a weird spelling and pronunciation.
It's not basic.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
Agree.
I'm Denise Ott. My address is 625 Kelso Road. I know Kelso's been discussed a lot lately. I'm obviously here to talk about Kelso. So I was watching the recent commission meeting and I noticed that Kelso was discussed. They're to do a study. They hung a sign that showed the speed limit. So we got some data on that. I will say about those signs, this wasn't what I came to talk about, but those signs show you the speed you're going. So as someone who lives very close to where the sign was hung, I did notice a change in driver behavior with the sign there. It's a starting point. I understand you have to start somewhere, just letting you know that I did directly notice it. So nonetheless, during the last commission meeting, that study was brought up, and one of the results of that was that only 4 kids are currently crossing Kelso during after-school walking home hours. That's great. That's good information again. But the commission then kind of they kind of started considering whether or not Kelso should still be considered for improvements. And that's where I start to get really concerned. Because one of my professional roles is to determine where infrastructure money is spent. And if you're looking at just the people using an infrastructure today, you're missing a large part of that picture. So I just kind of came to talk about how to look at that in a more, you need to look at that in a holistic way, not just today, there's no sidewalks, there's no crosswalk, there's no crossing guard, it doesn't feel safe, there's a high speed limit. No one's walking there. Great, I would say we need to fix that problem, but if you're just looking at 4 kids are crossing, it looks like maybe you shouldn't, there's no problem. So this group I know is going to be tasked with looking at where to put sidewalks, where to put crosswalks, things of that nature. So I just kind of wanted to run through some of the things that, the traffic engineering world looks at when we're looking at things like pedestrian safety. We look at vehicle speed because there's a direct relationship between speed and severity of crashes. We look at average daily traffic, crash data, where it's located. It's in the walking zone, if it's used to access transit, what it connects to, other impacts to the community. So if I'm looking at Kelso, I'm seeing a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit with no continuous sidewalk on it. It's a wide street, so when you're driving, if you see a wide street, your perception is that it's an open space and you can go faster, you can kind of be a little less careful. So it doesn't feel safe to walk on today. I'm sure there are other examples. In fact, I'm hearing other examples in our community
that are like this. So I'm not necessarily here to say, hey, Kelso should be first priority. I'm just here to say that you guys have a big task to look at. You have a challenge here. There's a lot of factors to look at. So take the time, do your homework. There's communities looking at this. There's other agencies looking at this. Look at it as a holistic approach, not just, we did a study, no one was speeding for the 2 weeks the sign was there, and only 4 kids crossed the street. There's a lot more to it than that. So I don't pity your position, or I don't envy your position. You have a challenge. I'm sure you're gonna keep hearing, like, this is, I've never been to one of these before. I'm glad this exists. I'm glad you guys are doing this. But yeah.
Just as a point of reference, we are doing an active transportation plan.
I know, yeah,
So
I'm aware.
that is part of the big effort of looking at this holistically, giving us a good foundational starting point for a lot of these kind of bigger issues, because I agree with you 100%, right? It's not a problem right now because people haven't moved there because they don't want their kids walking there, right? So you're not attracting the young fan, conceptually, right? So I think that is definitely recognized. So the question becomes, how do we understand the network and create it to be more safe? I always go back to, and I'm a finance guy, your home is more valuable if your street is safer and slower and you feel more welcome, it feels more welcoming to be in it. So even from an economics perspective, it is a great thing to be thinking about our streets differently. It's not just safety, safety is a huge one. I agree.
But there's more.
Right, but there's many variables to it that we need to be thinking about and understanding. In a town where we have essentially a 70, 80-year-old built out infrastructure that was designed with certain expectations. So trying to figure out how to make that transition, to your point, is a large task.
Yeah, well, even on Kelso, you know, they measured 4 kids crossing Kelso, but what you're missing is there's probably 20 to 30 kids on the other side of Kelso that are on the opposite side from all the schools. They don't walk. So on that one day, there were 4 kids. You're missing a huge portion of that information. You know, there's things like access to public transit on Bower Hill Road, that if somebody could walk up Kelso, they probably could use it. Or could use it, maybe, I don't know. But if you don't feel safe walking, you're not gonna do it. There's a park, again, I can see it. I rarely walk to it.
We haven't started yet.
No, she represented the 4.
Who did, Rudy?
Sorry, what's the question?
Who did
Who did a
the,
study that?
I think police department, yeah.
That kind of pedestrian cross on there.
They observed, yeah.
Typically, if it's a question of kids crossing, Sharon Croner will have a substitute crossing guard go and sit there and
I see.
observe.
I think it was one of the traffic officers, actually, they're short right now, yeah, they're actually down 1 or 2.
Does that change at all when they like the walk to school week? Have you noticed any change in how many kids walk to school? Okay.
No, it doesn't feel safe. And again, there's other cases. This is not like a.
Is that allowed?
Yeah, I think you just have to go back up.
Yeah.
I feel very compelled just to say something here about just 4 children. Being blessed to care for people's children and having children of my own, just 4 children feels just very insensitive to me. 1 child is enough. So when we're
I
talking
certainly
about
agree.
children and crossing, these are people's children. So I know that was mentioned, I watched it as well, and it did, you know, that just or only word in front of children is.
So that data was collected just through the crossing guard data, or we actually did a study through the school that
It wasn't a full blown study, I don't
Oh,
think,
okay.
they just did counts, I think it
Those
was
just
police
kind of
department, yeah.
for that period of time
Right.
that the children were observed as we're walking?
Yeah, it
Okay.
was a couple days, I think, I'm not sure of the details, but I know that they did a visual count.
And I don't know what the current staffing of crossing guards is, but it's always very difficult to
Yeah.
get crossing guards, and especially when you add new posts, it's very difficult to
Yeah.
find additional guards to staff those posts, so it's not always a financial issue, sometimes it's just a workforce issue, you know, and if you can't staff them, and then we have all of our police officers out
Yeah.
at crossing locations and not in school zones and monitoring other things, there's a trade-off there as well, so.
That's cooperative too with the school district, right? It's
Yeah, 50-50 split.
Yeah.
So I guess my only point is sometimes like bad data is worse than no data at all. And I think in this case, like, because it's anecdotal for a very period of time, and then to base any kind of decision on that does bring me concern, because if we're going to make decisions based on population at the time, then it seems like that we would really want to do like more.
I don't think that was like the be all end all of studies of
Yeah.
that, of Kelso Road. I think it was just to get a count because they had no data.
Got it.
That's my observation.
Did they observe any dog walkers? I'm sure they're there.
I know they're
Dogs
there.
everywhere. Yeah. Count those too, right?
Well, they were just checking the kids crossing the streets. I think they were checking to see if there were enough kids to warrant a crossing guard. Is there like a limit? I don't know.
Yeah, there is a threshold, and I can't remember exactly what the number is either, but there's a certain number, because obviously there's the need to staff that, but then the cost associated with it as well. And, you know, the average age of our crossing guards, as you would imagine, is not as young as we would all hope, and winter days, standing out in 20 degrees, it's a tough job to fill sometimes, so, that's why there's always a level, right, of justification to say, yeah, we need a guard there. The data shows it, and I know it doesn't take into account typically the number of kids that aren't walking because of that, but, yeah, I guess it's just looking at those thresholds and the population of that particular neighborhood, figure out what's the happy place.
John, did you have a comment?
Looks like you
The
could.
alternative
Yes.
route, right? What's the alternative route look like?
Sorry, gooey lag again. You can hear me?
We can hear
You
you.
can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I may be jumping the gun a little with regard to the I think it was the CIP list, but I did visit every street on that list this past weekend for context. And yeah, Kelso Road, it took me 10 seconds on that street to be like, yes, this is evidently one of the most dangerous streets in municipality. I would use the term substandard. And there are a lot of streets that we have that are pretty safe without a sidewalk because they're residential, that there's very little traffic, low speeds. Kelso is not that. So I think something needs to be done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Denise?
Any other citizens? Anyone online?
Yeah, just one more.
Oh, one
Yeah,
more. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just about.
Justice.
This will be quick. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on his idea and just kind of, I'm just wondering procedurally if there's a way, the way he's framing it is the residents will personally take action on something they propose, which sounds, to be honest with you, it sounds like there's a lot of friction there. What sounds like there would be less friction to me is if residents had a way to petition or move to a vote for what they want for their street. Is that something that's possible in the current code of the municipality? Is that an option for them, or how is that?
That's part of the policy if you.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, we're probably getting to a lot of things that they're like, we can just tell you the plan, come on.
That was his presentation.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
And I just, second little thing about like induced demand, like she was saying about if somewhere is unpleasant to walk or bike, people will not walk or bike there. just for context, I'm not, you know, in Tampa, I don't know if you've ever visited, but in like the city center, it's like a 6-lane highway with an 8-lane highway, like in the middle of the city, like where it should be the densest and most, like it's bananas. I mean, but we have the highest in Tampa rates of pedestrian and bicycle fatalities in the country. You have only people that ride the bus are the people that literally cannot afford a car because it's just their only option, and the buses in Tampa are horrible. If people think transportation service here in Pittsburgh is bad, go visit Tampa. The metro is even larger and the service is even worse. So, we're blessed to have something like the T and all those other things, and that are able to move you around without having to drive. So, you know, and I walk my dog with my fiance Kate on a regular basis. We walk like 4 or 5 miles a day on all the streets. So we're still exploring and learning all the different areas, but definitely I think it's a great idea to encourage, you know, however we design the streets, if we encourage that activity. So if we design for maximum throughput and less friction on the drivers and just focus on just getting as many drivers through as possible, that's what people will do because that's the easiest option. But if we focus on making it walkable, bikeable, who has the bike with, is it you with the bike and the things in the back? I see you. I live right near you. I know I do. That's so cool. I love that. But yeah, it just, you know, how we design it will induce demand. So we can induce demand to vehicle traffic, or we can induce demand to walking, biking, et cetera, right? Because like, for example, Uptown, Washington Road, or downtown, it is like a major thoroughfare, but I think that could be made more walkable and bikeable as well. I don't know if there's any like legal requirements for how much throughput you have to have, it being the kind of road it is. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I think certainly it's like basically like one of the best things about why I wasn't even looking to live in Mount Lebanon originally. But just the fact that I'm an 8-minute walk to Uptown, that's like, I was like sold. So, and I own a house, so fun times. So thank you all. That's it.
So interesting traffic calming, or I don't know what you want to call it, pedestrian safety, more likely from the Tampa area. We spent time at Madeira Beach, Indian Shores, over that way, and they have 4 6-lane roads up and down north and south at points. And at the crosswalks that are mid-block, there's a little thing on the post with a flag. And you take the flag and you wave the flag as you drive, and you put it in the other side.
You're your own crossing guard.
Yeah.
I love
So there's a little PVC pipe with flags in it. You wave your flag.
What about lighted signals? You keep talking about crossing guards. What about
So,
lighted signals?
We have some.
We
Those are great.
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, not to get off topic. I found it an interesting concept.
Can I just circle back to, I just want to take a minute, I don't know if this is like proper format, I'm still learning here, but I just want to take a minute to thank everybody that came to speak today. Laura and Finn, Marty, Justice, Denise, all of the people who came. I think we're getting a general consensus for what our community expects, needs. And I think our board, we really need to recognize our position and the ability or the potential we have to bring this change to the community. I really appreciate that you're on the board, that we have the principal, where, you know, connections to the school. And I would really like to see our board do better for our children in the community. We're a walking district. As a mom of 2 young children, we don't have the choice of a bus to come and pick up. And I know we moved here knowing that, and that's all fine. And, you know, we will do it, but we have the reasonable expectation that our kids will get there safely. So let's, as a board, I hope we can do better and create the kind of community that our children deserve.
Yeah, okay.
Online? Any comments online? So no comments on word at this time?
Thank you.
Oh. Thank you. Are we ready to move on to our fifth item? Commission liaison report?
I honestly have nothing really new to report, from a commission perspective. Yeah, again, all the other boards are settling in as you guys are, so the process is kind of settling in. Commission is kind of in, normal business mode, doing a lot of contract, approvals for road work and sidewalks and all the spring, contract approvals for all the stuff that happens every year. So nothing really new to report, from commission. Beyond that?
Thank you, Andrew. All right, we're on to new business, CIP lists, the first item.
So I could speak to that a little bit. I sent everyone an email, a link to a video that was a presentation about sidewalks and additional sidewalks the Gateway engineers put together for us. At the suggestion of the assistant manager, Ian McMeans, we have to come up with capital items. We don't have to, but this is our opportunity annually to present things to the commission as a budget ask for capital improvement items. So one of the things that is one of the important things that the commission is talking about now is the addition of sidewalks. Now, as you looked at that list, there's way more than we can do in 1 year. So I think prioritizing those into groups, and they were broken down by streets and segments of streets, would probably not be a bad idea. So that's one suggestion that from the assistant manager for this group as an advisory board to look that over and suggest to the commission what you feel is the most important, A to B or A to Z or N, whatever it might be. And probably a good threshold for, each year, the expense would be about $250,000 between 200. That's what we have budgeted this year for sidewalks, for improvements and additions of sidewalks that are not existing. So $250,000 to $300,000 would probably be a good group, a way to group those lists that I sent you.
And do we know how much sidewalk that would get us?
It's listed on there, basically, so you have to kind of, put them together. That's kind of what we do with our programs too, is you have a certain amount of money that's funded and figure out what the most important need is. And that, for this group, that would be a suggestion or as an advisory board, what you would pass on to the commission. And ultimately, they would make that decision.
I will add, because again, I do CIP for lots of agencies. This is a short-term thing, right? It's like what has been prioritized, what is out there that is a candidate for short-term, like to get funded, right? And how would you guys want to see it prioritized? That's one piece. For me, the more strategic piece is how do we think about funding these things? I know that's a big ask, but that's, when it really boils down to it, again, Rudy pointed out rightly, $250,000. It's not going very far, but not far at all, in fact. How much is our street budget?
1.2 million. I'm sorry, 2.2 million.
And how much do we spend on bricks? Right?
It depends on the year. Last year was about $180,000.
These are all part of, right, maintaining our transportation network, right? The street is the streets that are adopted by the municipality are the municipality's responsibility, right? We do need to pay for those. How we do that? That's a question. Sidewalks are on private property that are within the right of way. We don't have to pay for them. We might want to pay for them. And that's what the most recent policy that we adopted says, is that we are going to encourage people by contributing to their cost to put in a sidewalk. So there are lots of complexities here about mobility, right, that kind of have to come into play, that I would encourage you all to, and I'm happy to always have this conversation, I geek out on this stuff, is how do we think about the long-term costs and allocating them, right? This is, again, building capacity to think differently about our right-of-way is ultimately how these things change, because we have 86 odd miles of streets. It's not going to change overnight. This is a 40 or 50 year process, right, to turn all this stuff over. So every year that I do something, how am I thinking about it? How am I funding it? How do I understand the cost of sidewalks versus the cost of streets? Right? These things, these are variables that we have processes that are in place because we've built it and it works really well. Rudy and his team are amazing, and Gateway are amazing at keeping it all going, right? I think we can all agree, our sidewalks, kind of bumpy, but that's okay. Right, commissions haven't prioritized that. So the question becomes, how do we do it differently, right? It's not just go do that also, right? It's gotta be, how are we thinking about all these pieces together? And the CIP is where those big dollar activities start to shift, right? So how do you understand this, and how do you want to think about these things? How much you propose thinking differently? Not saying you all have to be finance experts, right? We have a finance board for that. But there's policy shifts, right, that need to happen within that CIP also, right? There's the bigger stuff that you want to be thinking about and saying, okay, how do I think about these kind of bigger strategic initiatives that we want to put forward that maybe we're not doing this year, or we're not going to propose it next year, but I want to put it on year 5. Because those things need to be on the radar for the community, even though we're not there yet, but we need to start planning for it. So, but just to kind of give you a little bit more context of CIP is, yeah, it's kind of like just an item, and every year we're going to give you a list and you're going to look at it, but there's more there to kind of that long-term thinking that is where, again, along with policy, you have opportunity to have a lot of influence. It's a longer game, but it's really where the structural change happens.
Why are they so expensive?
It's just the nature of construction. I mean, there's nothing there now. You have to excavate and plan, and concrete's not cheap. I mean, we were paying about $110. I'm sorry?
Is gravel cheap?
It's labor, it's everything. I mean, everything costs more these days.
I mean, does it have to be made out of concrete?
According to municipal standards now, yes. Yeah, it's concrete sidewalks. The one thing that I will add to, Commissioner Flynn, I thought of this as he was speaking. This is a 5-year plan as well. So, I think what we were looking for was just a prioritized list. So in other words, the sidewalks that have already been listed as a need can be prioritized from A to Z, so that the commission realizes what's most important to the community and to this board, so that they can prioritize those expenses. They can flip anything. The manager can change from, year 1 through year 5. We can do year 5 first. There's no need to do year 1. But we have it in an organized list where we now know what the community wants, and we can make a plan financially to attack that. So that's really, I think, what we're looking is to prioritize that list.
Yeah, I didn't mean to take y'all off on a different path, but CIP gets, kind of goes in lots of directions, but yeah, to Rudy's point.
It doesn't have to be $250,000. I just threw that number out there. It can be, I mean, we could put everything in year 1, and then the commission can decide to break it up however they see fit. But I think that it's probably easier to manage when the board has spoken and said, this is the most important, and this is we should work through the list in this fashion based on needs or, volumes of traffic, volumes of pedestrians that use those areas, accident history that we've had, different things that impact the safety to the community and to the users. The proximity to schools, I know that was one of the considerations by the commission as well. Work back from the schools and try to fill in the gaps, if you will. We have full mapping on GIS of all the sidewalks that exist in the community. So there's certain, like Sunset Hills there's not very many sidewalks. Virginia Manor, there's not very many. So there's different parts of the community that are not covered whatsoever. And there are some things that, you asked about construction. Some folks have just done like those paver type things out in their front yards in certain areas. That's not the municipal code. So when we build things, we have to build them to whatever the code says that they have to be built. It's 4 feet wide by 4 inches thick, 6 inches with reinforced wire. If you drive over it as an apron, certain widths, there's ADA standards that we have to comply with. Those all come back to the municipality too. If we're building it, we have to build it the way the rules say that we have to build it. So that if God forbid someone had an accident or something, it was built correctly by the standards that are set by national, state codes and so forth.
So the list is the list.
The list is the list that has been discussed recently. So that doesn't mean that's you can't change the list, but that's the list that we're starting with, because those are the folks that have approached the commission, said, hey, you know, we have issues on Kelso Road or
Right.
Woodland and different areas. And a lot of those are because they're around school areas and we're, you know, their main pedestrian routes that are used by children and everyone.
So the conversation is like, and for us to consider is like the order. Year one, year two. I watched the video, full disclosure. I live off of Woodlawn. It impacts me personally. I'm curious about that particular street with like all the trees.
It's not gonna be easy.
How
It's-
in the world?
It's not gonna
Like,
be easy.
I have two on my property. My whole side yard has already been dug up once at a very expensive cost. There's sewer and like, I'm just curious, like, how much thought and consideration went into that over time with like root damage and like, might look really pretty at first. But we've all walked sidewalks in the community that are a disaster because of our beautiful, beautiful trees. And so it's like, how much thought specifically for Woodlawn? I'm more concerned about Kelso, quite frankly, but like,
Well, it's not only trees. I mean, there's walls, there's stone
yeah,
walls.
there's big, beautiful
columns,
boulders and
right, there's all kind of-
landscaping that people have put into place that they're gonna be financially responsible in moving and altering.
Right.
That's not us thankfully, but like, it does, I feel like it's like, so when we talk about like, it's been approved,
It hasn't been approved. It's just,
No,
it's a working
it's
list.
just a
It's
list,
just a
okay,
working
that was kind of my question, like, is it the working?
Funding has been appropriated
list
for 2024 to do some work.
So I just had bigger questions. I mean, sidewalks are great, but like the maintenance involved, when you're talking about like trees and root systems and like the long term.
We have
I
over-
just feel like how is Woodlawn, I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful street with all the trees and the coverage and everything. I'm like, as I watch that, every time I drive down that street, now I'm like, there's a tree and there's a tree. And like, where's the sidewalk gonna go?
Well, it has to be within the right of way. It's, you know, the public right of way for and that's 50 feet wide. So it's 25 feet from the center line. So my understanding is it has to be within the right of way, the public right of way. It can't be on private property for beyond that right of way, because that makes it available to the public. It's part of the street network system, but it's for pedestrians. So, I mean, it's a great question.
I've just been
There's-
looking, right? Like, where exactly is the sidewalk gonna go with big oak trees that line, I mean, with not much,
Right.
like from my trees just on my.
Most of those trees
alone
are municipal trees. that
They are.
you know,
As
we
a
have-
matter of fact, you helped me in the process of buying my home because of all the damage that, I mean, there was consideration for like cutting them down and I was like, well, that might be a deal breaker because this, I mean, they're gorgeous, but I mean, I feel like there's a lot more to consider when making big decisions,
Well, and
especially
the
when it's.
homeowners are gonna be a part of that process and that decision-making process, because ultimately, they're gonna be their sidewalks to maintain after
Right.
they're installed. So each homeowner is gonna be a part of that process, and we're gonna have to work with the homeowners, and we're gonna have to figure out a way of doing that. You know, in some places, it might not be possible. It may be a point where there may be a gap because of what you've mentioned, until those trees are gone. You know, nothing lasts forever, so at some point they will be gone, and then you work towards that. But I think that from what I heard from the discussion sessions and the commission speaking with each other, is we have to start somewhere. We can continue to talk about this and never get anything
Right.
done, but we can start and put pieces in place that, you know, Commissioner Flynn we've had many conversations about, for instance, underground electric on streets. And, you know we can't do a whole neighborhood, but as we're ripping up streets, we're looking at the possibility of possibly looking in to having conduit in there that can be used after that network is completed, and we do certain blocks of the street. So I think that's where we're coming from. We're not gonna come in there and blow everything up and, you know, rip everything out and start from scratch.
Right.
Realistically, you can't do that, and we know that, but.
I was just more curious in the process, right, with that particular street, with the amount of big, I mean, like, where are they going to go.
Was that part of the presentation? Did Gateway actually map that out?
They did, I mean,
Yeah,
I looked at where, right, and it was a very passionate conversation, so you could tell that, I mean, people are very invested,
right.
right, and both ways on, you know, whether we want them or not want them, or on this side of the street or that side of the street, or start at the end of the street, or, you know, where the schools are, you know, alternative routes to schools were discussed and dismissed. So again, I love to see things from everybody's perspective, but the one consideration I was thinking of with that particular one is like, where exactly?
The trees are the biggest challenge,
Where-
really. I mean, you can
Mhm.
move a wall, you can change a wall. We did that, as a matter of fact, on MacArthur, probably about 15, 18 years ago. That one section between Woodland and further down where Wainwright wrapped up around on MacArthur, there was no sidewalk there, and that was relatively new install. Another section was down on North Meadowcroft, probably about what,
10 years.
10 years ago, yeah, something like that. There was a section down there that filled the gap in. And it was a challenge. There were areas where you had to bring the sidewalk out to the curb, and then you would have a grass strip in other areas. So you work with what you had there, you know, so I can't, without a specific question or a specific tree, I guess I can't really answer that question. It's just gonna have to be dealt with.
Okay, so, but it's already been like, I think in my question really was like, those things have already been considered. When looking at that street and making that decision, or other streets and making those decisions, clearly.
I think to an extent it was. I think that
Nothing's been designed,
right,
so it's.
the goal was to
Looked
get
at-
dollar
It's just like we
value.
want them
Issues
here.
have been identified, we know things are gonna have to be dealt with. And then a general cost was put to sidewalk through those areas, but you're gonna encounter things when you actually get out there and survey and go into design of things that some of them are gonna be easier than others, and those prices are gonna change some, but it's a good start to see those links and what those costs are gonna be, estimated to be. And then to prioritize those, and then when you get into the design of a section, you start to find out if you have major issues or not.
So 250,000 could go really far on some streets and
Correct.
not
Right.
block on another street.
Right,
Which is what you need us to determine
right.
what we would recommend.
That's why those
We do all
numbers.
the low hanging fruit first and do the easy stuff, or we
Right.
do one big one.
But
Whatever
I
it is.
do know, I don't want to speak out of turn, but there are some other communities, and we worked with a community up in the North Hills that it was doing something similar, where they were looking to fill gaps of sidewalks where they ended and connect things. And they developed a whole matrix system of prioritizing those things, from cost to needing right of way, to impacts to utilities, to proximity to parks, proximity to schools, all those types of things. And they scored things just to help them get a start to that priority list, and then maybe you make some adjustments from there. But it was a pretty nice matrix they came up with, so I'm happy to share that for you guys at least to look at. Those are some of the things you can think about, like Rudy said, if it might be cheaper to put a section of sidewalk on a road where there's no sidewalks, but the nearest sidewalk on any other street, if it's a half a mile away, you know, you're not really connecting any dots. So some of them low hanging fruit might be, hey, there's just this one section that we can connect here to here. Or it's really close to a school, and there's, you know, so
And
there is a way to
I
kind of.
mean, you know, if you have a lot of turns in a road or a speed limit that's a little bit higher, you certainly want sidewalks there before you have a slower area, you know, where vehicles aren't traveling as fast, so.
And from a utility standpoint, if we have an opportunity to make some consideration, you know, for maybe underground utility at some point, it probably not feasible on a wide scale.
Maybe you can help me. I reached out to a couple of contacts that I have, and I'm struggling here trying to get somebody to get back to me, so.
Hey, we
we
did
can-
host your fleet guy though, he just came.
Yeah.
Well, so and again, this is a topic that Rudy and I've had many times, we've covered many times, but to give you a little context of how I think about this. For me, the right of way involves the street, it involves the sidewalks, it involves the trees, it involves the utilities, right? This is a right of way conversation. This isn't just about getting more sidewalks in. And
Right.
personally, I'm of the opinion that a sidewalk is a tactical solution, just like a speed bump is a tactical solution, right? We put those things in place because we want cars to go down the street fast. But if I design the street differently, I might not need a sidewalk in every situation. Right? There are lots of examples in other countries where they have designed residential streets to not need sidewalks because they're designed to be slow, right? So do we always have to cut down the tree? No, because we don't need a sidewalk, because we've designed the right of way differently. But again, that takes a holistic, thoughtful process, right? And we have been doing what we do for a long time and we do it really, really well. Change takes time. If we want to make those types of changes, that's a structural discussion. Yes, we have to do this tactical stuff of implementing sidewalks and trying to find the gaps to fill and right, do the best we can. But to a certain extent, I am a firm believer that the biggest power you got is looking at how do we understand the whole thing, all right? And make recommendations on how we should be thinking about the whole thing, right? Because again, there's always variables. There's always these complexities, right? That's just a reality. We're always gonna have trees. But we want to preserve trees. I don't want to cut down, trees for sidewalk. Maybe I do, maybe, I don't know, right? But we have a right of way. We spend a lot of money on it, holistically understanding it and saying, how do we imagine this thing? So in all these scenarios, if it's a residential street, here are your variables. If it's an arterial, here are your variables, right? How should we be thinking about these things collectively? I know I'm throwing a big question out, but ultimately, that's where we need to be framing this. And then within that context, which cycle? Right? Which one right now?
Where do we start?
Yeah. We gotta keep
Yeah.
taking the small bites while we're also thinking about the big stuff.
This is just a start. I mean, we're on the ground level here, so we're just trying to get things in order. There's gonna be a lot of conversations. There's gonna be a lot of residents that come in with issues that we're gonna try and solve. And there's gonna be different ways to do that. So the input from the board is important, I think, to get us started, number one, and then expand upon that years moving forward. This is just year one. This is the second meeting that we've ever had. We got a long way to go.
Yes, we do.
I think it would be an interesting concept to think of a road that might be a good showcase piece for the road design that you're describing. Because a lot of people maybe haven't experienced that before, and if people can get an exposure, what is the name of the? Vonarf, yeah, so, like a clever design on a road that our residents can go through and they'll be like, hey, I kind of like that, and then we can kind of just shift the whole mentality of what our roads can be like, instead of just doing the same thing, slapping down the concrete that is so expensive. Maybe is there a road on our list? Maybe this is totally not possible, but could we redesign a small road? I mean, I don't know. It's just something to ponder, I guess.
Not necessarily a small road, but just looking at the list that we have here, I know it was talked about before, Kelso is a wide road. A lot of these other roads that I'm pretty familiar with are narrow, have a lot of trees, have a lot of things in the way.
I was thinking more
So-
not long, but
Yeah.
wide and short, but
Kelso is a
Yeah.
pretty long section of
Yeah.
road, but it's pretty wide, and I don't know, when was the last time Kelso was repaved?
Kelso's a state road too. Don't
It is,
forget.
it
depends
is.
on
So
road.
it would-
We
it would
don't have
require
much
extra-
control over that
Right.
as other roads. We have county roads up there, Bower Hill, we have state roads. Surprisingly, and so is Seagar. Seagar is another road that,
Talking about
Does
what.
that change the funding piece for it as well?
I'm sorry,
Does that impact the funding?
we don't maintain it. So they pave it, so the state would pave it. The last time it was paved, to answer your question, was a water line that was installed there probably about 5 or 6 years ago. If you remember that.
So I go along the lines of what Commissioner Flynn said, do we have an opportunity with a road like Kelso, not saying that Kelso is the road, but a road like Kelso where you're doing less work to eliminate trees and retaining walls and different, and take a road similar to Kelso that's wider, you could potentially work with PennDOT. I know that's always a challenge, but to look at that design of that road, is there the opportunity to take the shoulders and put the sidewalks, not necessarily in the right of way still, but closer to the road and do something?
Yeah.
I think it would be cheaper is my thought, not knowing finances, not knowing how all that engineering works, but just looking at it from my perspective, because it's a wider road, I think that would be something that would be worth considering, and maybe approaching PennDOT about ideas that we might have. I can speak from my experience, and this is in PennDOT, the city of Pittsburgh, but with Carnegie Mellon, Where I work, we have certain challenges with certain city-owned streets within the proximity of campus. And when our design people go to the city and offer to do things to help with that, to help with the design, to help with, the engineering of it, city's much more responsive to say, yeah, go ahead. If you're interested in helping with that, and, we have a intersection, we're working right at Fifth Avenue in Morewood, where we want to expand the turning lane and move a bus shelter back. And CMU is going to take the brunt of some of the cost of that, but it's improving that intersection for safety purposes, and the city's agreeable because we're putting forth an effort to do it. You know what I mean? So it might be worth coming up with our idea of a road and then approaching PennDOT saying, we're willing to.
They're more
Potentially
receptive now
help
than
with
I've attended a couple conferences, virtual conferences with PennDOT, and they're much more receptive now than they were 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
To those type of ideas. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, again, we're dancing around a lot of concepts here, right? Tactical urbanism, right? If you think about this on a spectrum, right? Step one could be, well, let's just paint Kelso, right? Right? Paint some cool designs along sides to narrow it down, right? Again, if
Or at least
allows us.
visually, yeah.
Right, right, that's something that can happen much more dynamically, and the other street that was just mentioned to me, thank you, was Scrubgrass. Scrubgrass is ours, right? And it has a lot of those same experiences, right, that Kelso has, right? It's kind of a cut through, people go fast, right? There's a stop sign right in the middle. If you stop once, right, there's a bunch of kids that are crossing there all the time, right? There's a whole dynamic there that we could conceptually, and it's on the list of having these conversations. Right, the residents have already come to us and said, we want to have this dialogue. So the question becomes, okay, right? I don't know the last time we did Scrubgrass, but it hasn't been that long, right? It's a relatively well-maintained street. We're not going to rip it out and start over. But what steps can we take, right, to go down this path, to get us moving in that direction? Is it painting to narrow? Is it adding a sidewalk? Painting is real cheap. Sidewalks are expensive, right? Can I add bump outs? Can I add planters? Can we let the community participate in some of this, right? There are lots of interesting dynamics. For me, I think the important thing is, and I've been thinking about this a lot, even since we conceptualized the mobility board. For me, what's important is that this is a community discussion. These are community streets. These are their streets as much as they are our streets. So the question becomes, people come and say, I want my street changed. Okay, let's have a conversation. Well, actually, they don't say that. They say that I want a speed bump. 90% of the time, I want a speed bump. Or stop sign. Yeah. But that might not be the right answer. How do we as a group facilitate? You can do other things that actually are more impactful, right? And there is a process that we take you through that help you understand. It might be a vulnerable, right? It might not, I don't know, right? But again, that neighborhood ultimately needs to engage in that process and understand and think about it. And then they say, yeah, we'd love that. And we go, that's gonna cost $1 million. How about if we paint it the first time, right? Right, how about we paint some stuff and put out some temporary planters and some rubber bumpers that are affordable that we can put in and take out when we don't need them anymore, and we've proven the use case. Right? Those things we can do tactically, right? We buy those things once and we can reuse them. Those things become possible, and we prove the designs before we start tearing out. Arden, how much did Arden cost? It was expensive. I don't remember. But the traffic circle, right? Those things, it cost a lot of money.
The roundabout.
220.
Yeah. So
I mean, the whole.
That's like the whole year's budget.
Yeah.
For sidewalks, yeah, right? So I can't do those things. So let's find more tactical ways to empower that process.
I think tactical urbanism, man, you'll have people with jackhammers from.
I know.
Yeah. Please, no, please, no.
Are we collecting data on Arden still, or is there any?
No.
So it's, I was just curious.
All right, John, what do you got?
I just wanted to say, speaking as a cyclist, speed bumps are never the right answer. I'm definitely in favor of other traffic calming measures. And going back to what Aaron said, I is looking over that road safety audit from last month. It came to my attention that PennDOT heavily favors using the same width as interstate highways for a lot of different kinds of roads. And I would assume that even though a lot of the streets we're talking about are municipality roads and not PennDOT, I don't think we necessarily need a wide road to start to consider going in rather than out for pedestrian accommodations. It was mentioned earlier, speed limits on residential streets generally 25 miles an hour. That's still honestly kind of high for that use case. So I suspect we have a lot of extra width even on streets that aren't as wide as Kelso that we might be able to use creatively moving forward. I don't know what our typical street width is right now for a random residential street, but
About 22 feet inside the curbs.
22 feet
Yeah, give or take.
inside the curbs.
Yes.
Yeah, we got at least a couple extra feet in there. That's all.
What about, I don't know if the snow plowing impacts it, but the makeshift, like they have them at the trolley station, like those plastic.
Bollards,
Yeah,
yeah.
is that, I mean,
It's
The breakaway ones.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah, and I was gonna mention that as well.
snow
Like,
plow is a
there's
challenge.
certain things that I look at from my perspective,
Yeah.
and snow plowing is one of them. So when you have a wider road, you're plowing more surface, so there's more snow that gets slung onto the sidewalks that are right along the edge too. And folks get upset about that. So, when you do have the wider roadway, it creates other issues in the wintertime, especially with heavier snows. And we have to make more passes as well. So narrower roads are easier to plow and quicker, use less salt as well.
Climate change, less snow, less to worry about.
Thanks, Aaron. You just changed it.
Double up the salt.
Can't wait till next winter.
The takeaway that we look more closely at this list, I know it's a list, but just, as the board to say, like, for next time, I mean, I don't want to keep having discussions, but I mean, let's come to a decision about what our next steps are. We have the list. I mean, we could I don't know, vote on them or what are our thoughts for the takeaway for that list? What can we do with that?
Can I offer that, just as an example, so the Legacy Parks Board used to go and look at all the parks every year before they make recommendations. Now, I'm not saying you guys have to go and bicycle to every one of these, but maybe, again, that's up to the board how you want to approach that.
Okay.
But I would say give yourselves, until the next meeting, right? And the homework is probably to go look at these locations. Do your homework, right? Look on Google Maps, and that works.
Drive them if you can.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and then just mark your own list, right? And if you come back and you guys have discussion next month about how
You
you want
guys
to
good with
prioritize.
that?
Yeah.
Do you think we wouldn't be a little bit strategic on, and I know this might be hard with working schedules, but if we all go, say on a Saturday, we're gonna have a very different impression of a road. Like, should we try to strategically see them, like maybe somebody sees it in the morning, in the afternoon, evening? Is there any kind of thought process on that? Day of the week? Is it gonna make a difference
We'll all
for?
have each other's emails.
Yeah.
I would think so. So, maybe even that out a weekday and a weekend.
Yeah.
Say, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, that,
If we're looking at like how
right.
many people are walking, and I don't know if that needs to be a huge factor, I think it is with some consideration. But that was just something that came to mind.
All right, so Beth wants us to do it twice, not just once. No.
No, you don't personally, but maybe you do the morning and I do maybe you do
I
the
see,
weekend
okay.
and I do a weekday,
Okay.
something
all right,
like that.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess we could, just share emails and figure out, who's on what and divide it up that way. Take a look at them, come back next meeting with, with what we saw.
Use SharePoint?
SharePoint is out there.
Yeah.
You guys can create a sheet in there, store the sheet, make a list.
Actually, that's not a bad idea, if we create like list and maybe some kind of point rating system so that we could start
Yeah.
ranking this somehow.
Well, Mike's gonna send the example from the North Hills. too,
Yeah,
so.
and I think that would
Just
be
do it
where
through
we
Teams,
start.
Okay.
You can chat on there, and do that, use the chat feature and so forth. That's what it's for.
I'm happy to make a list, to start a list.
Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
If that's helpful.
Thank you. All right. Other CIP lists, or that was the list, right, Rudy?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, I mean, unless anyone has any thoughts on additional things that are CIP, which are expenses over $100,000, basically is what it comes down to for capital investments for infrastructure for the municipality. So at this time, I mean, maybe you think about that before the next meeting as well.
All right. Are we ready for Mike? Thomas?
Mike's ready.
All right, it's ready.
I'm ready.
The confidence that he does.
Uh-huh. I'll be respectful of everybody's time, but I think most of the discussion, if there's gonna be discussion, maybe a little bit more towards the end. We shared the policy already with everybody. It's not a real long policy. Hopefully you've had a chance to at least read through it. So I don't know if you can get that.
I'm not sure how to do this.
Okay.
Go on to the share screen, yeah,
Yep.
and then,
Click the mobility, the second one on the bottom, there you go.
Yeah, and
Yep,
then
that's it.
share in the bottom right.
bottom right hand, yeah,
Down.
right there.
Yep.
Good job. Good job.
There it is.
Now hit Control L.
So just relatively quick an outline, the goals and the objectives of the policy, which is the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, NTMP. Essentially, it's traffic calming. It's the policy for our neighborhoods to request and ultimately, hopefully get a traffic calming plan implemented. It's a 3-step process. And then I'll go through some neighborhoods that have gone through the process and some neighborhoods that are currently going through or have started the process that is going to continue in the process with this board. So I'm gonna go to the next slide. Hopefully.
Just hit the down arrow there.
Over on the right hand side. or-
There we go.
Okay. So in the policy itself, essentially, the policy was adopted in November of 2012, so different commission at the time, different staff at the time, different traffic engineer at the time, but the policy itself, the purpose of it was to reduce traffic on the local streets, encourage the drivers to stay out on the major arterials like Cochran and Washington Road, help ensure safe vehicle speed throughout the community and to improve access and safety for both drivers and pedestrians. So again, this is a 2012 policy. We've talked about other policies and things. This were the objectives that were set out back when this policy was adopted in 2012. Next slide. So the first step in the process that Aaron was referring to earlier with his question is that the policy is for the neighborhood to come with a petition to the municipality that's signed by 20 households. Again, that fluctuates because some neighborhoods don't even have 20 households. It's just a kind of a number, but less can be less to come with that petition. But essentially, the petition is a written request for the municipality to go to that first step of the policy. So that really gets you in the system. Okay, we have the neighborhood is saying, we want you to look at it. We think we have a problem, whether it's speeding, traffic volumes, whatever it is. We think there's a problem and we want traffic calming. So the first step in the policy in the process, when you get that petition, is to collect that limited screening data, which would be taking a snapshot of how much traffic is using the road on a typical day, what the speeds are. 85th percentile is essentially what we're looking at from that data. That screening data is what is evaluated against the thresholds that have been established in this policy for whether or not you qualify for moving forward in the plan or don't qualify for moving through the plan. So table 1, which is on the next slide. These are the thresholds that have been established for local streets and collector streets. I won't get into what a local street and a collector street is, but we went through that process several years ago where every street within the municipality has been classified. There's a map, I think it's available online, it's available in GIS, the municipal GIS. So if you're questioning what a particular street is, we can easily find out if it's a local street or a collector street. The thresholds are a little bit different for each. So a collector street, in theory, has higher traffic and is supposed to have higher traffic, so those volume thresholds are higher, whether it's the daily volume threshold of 5,000 vehicles per day, exceeding that, or 500 vehicles in 1 hour, that's for a collector street. Local streets, those are really more your residential neighborhoods. Those are all the ones that we really get petitions for. We don't really get them for collector streets. Those are more your residential neighborhoods. Anything over 2,000 vehicles per day or 200 vehicles in 1 hour, that's bi-directional. And then speed limit, or the 80th percentile speed at 7 miles per hour or more than the posted speed limit. So those currently are what the policy thresholds are. So you get the petition, you collect that screening data. A lot of times it's done with the police department's equipment. And then we look at that data, and if it doesn't exceed any of those thresholds, process over, as far as this policy goes. We then tell the neighbors, you know, they can do things on their own, hey, drive like your kids live here signs, the little green guy with the flag. Those are the only kind of advice that we can give them if they don't meet the thresholds. In my time since 2014, working with the traffic board, I would say 1 out of every 5 neighborhoods has met the threshold. So we've done a few plans that have been implemented. For every one that we've implemented, there are 4 or 5 other neighborhoods that have started the process, had the petition. We collected screening data, they didn't meet the threshold. So it was kind of like left to their own devices. Well, park on the street if you can. I mean, you could create your own traffic calming as a neighborhood.
And Mike,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I might have missed it. Those thresholds come from PennDOT, correct?
So PennDOT issued a traffic calming handbook for municipalities back in probably around 2012. And the former traffic consultant from Mount Lebanon helped PennDOT write that policy. It's modeled after what's in that publication, but that publication is also very general in nature and it essentially says, here's things that you should consider, and every municipality is different. And if you want to have a traffic calming in your municipality, we recommend you establish your own policy with thresholds that the municipality deems appropriate. So these numbers here, you're not going to find in the traffic calming handbook. I worked with other municipalities where they've made their speed threshold 5 miles per hour over. I've worked with other municipalities where it's 10 miles per hour over because they essentially don't want neighborhoods to qualify, but they want to say, hey, we have a policy, you don't meet the threshold. So it's community dependent. So this right now is what the thresholds are and what the policy is for Mount Lebanon.
Mike, does the data collection have to be done by the police, or can
No.
residents supplement it, or?
No, a lot of times we will do it as well. We've done it. There's multiple ways to do it. So you have the big trailers that they have, which, as we've all talked about, they're obstructive. You see them, it's flashing at you. Even the ones that mount on the poles, I think you can even make those go dark,
You can make
right?
them go stealth mode.
Yeah, so they'll
don't
go
display
stealth mode
as-
where they're on there. And if you're driving by, you have no idea it's on there and getting your speed, or it can be on and it'll flash the speed for you. So that's one way to do it. We also have ATRs that we'll put down on the road, which are just the little hoses that are separated by 8 feet, and they'll get speeds as well. And then we've also, what we did for scrub grass is we did ATRs and we did a spot speed study, which is essentially VASCAR. So there were lines already painted out there and we just had somebody sitting off the side of the road out of view, manually getting speeds. Interestingly enough, the speed study that we did manually, the 85th percentile speed was exactly the same as it was from the ATRs, which was a high. That's why it's that's why it's going through the process. So there are multiple ways to do it.
I'm just wondering if we collect any resident data, because I know,
No.
prior working with Amazon and
Yeah.
through resident streets, and we would get, complaints, and there was Ring cameras now have applications which will gather this data.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
That's useful then.
Well, it's coming, so, because you're,
Makes sense.
so the technology now is advancing that now communities are proving their cases. So I was just curious.
John, has a comment, question?
Yes. So when you say that 1 in 5 neighborhoods qualify, that meaning 1 in 5 neighborhoods that gathered the signatures and
Correct.
submitted, or so if a street was bad enough that the residents were concerned enough to get together and ask for traffic calming, there's still only a 20% success rate.
Yeah, we've probably, there's probably been a good 20 neighborhoods that have been screened since I've started on the traffic board. We've got.
So not a huge data set, but. Okay.
No, right, but I think two plans have been implemented and 3 are somewhere in the process, mostly early in the process, so. And then there were some previous to when I started sitting with the traffic board. It's just kind of that was just my subjective analysis of, we've had a lot of petitions come in and we've done that process. We even, a lot of times what we'll do is I'll meet with Lieutenant Green in the neighborhood that brought a petition, and we'll walk it with the residents who brought the petition, because what was happening early on is we would go out and we would collect the speed where we said it would be the best place to get the highest speeds. And inevitably the neighborhood would come and say, well, you had it in the wrong spot. It should have been. So now in the very beginning, we go out and meet with the residents and they tell us exactly where they perceive the speeds to be the highest, and that's where we collect the data. So it kind of takes that extra subjective step out of it. But I think that would be what we would do if the neighborhood, forget where Patricia was on, if they come with a petition. Yeah. So I know you already recommended that the police get their equipment out there, but I think that's more just for you guys just to kind of get a feel for it. I don't know that really is going to be the screening data that would come out of a petition. You want to go to the next slide? So let's say you bring your petition, you do the screening data, you now do qualify. So the second step in the process is to develop an alternatives analysis plan or a traffic management plan development. So a neighborhood meeting is held with the residents. At the time it was a traffic board, obviously in your case, it would be the folks on this board, the commissioner from that ward, and then any other commission member that wants to attend the meeting. And it's that meeting that a lot of the folks who maybe signed the petition but didn't come to the traffic board meetings, that's their opportunity to express issues and concerns that they see, where they see speeding, where they see, people not adhering to the speed limit or stop signs, things like that. That's where we get all the information from all the different residents, and we establish kind of the limits of the scope of our alternatives analysis. So not only we are evaluating, for example, when we did Arden, our scope extended beyond. It extended over to Parker, extended to Beverly, extended out each way, because we needed to create a baseline so that once Arden's plan was implemented, a lot of times is in the past, other neighborhoods, the next neighborhood over comes as, well, since you did that over there, now everybody's coming on my street. So that's established that this neighborhood meeting kind of establishes the limits of where we're going to collect our baseline data and establishes the parameters for our alternatives analysis. So then we take that, collect all of our baseline data, and develop an alternatives analysis report, which will include all kinds of different traffic calming options and treatments that are available in that publication that I said PennDOT published, publication 383. So there's all kinds of things in there that have different impacts on speeds, different impacts on volumes, moderate, no impact, some impact, impacts to public works, impacts to emergency times. I mean, there's a lot of different treatments in there. The purpose of us putting together the alternatives analysis is to say, this particular treatment is feasible, or this particular treatment is not feasible because of A, B, and C, or it is feasible, but here's what the cost might be, here's what the negative impacts are. It's basically here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. Here's what, if you do it, the pros are, the advantages, the disadvantages. That alternatives analysis report, all those different options and concepts, then go to the next meeting, the next page, which is to then meet with the neighborhood. Again, present all those options, the board, this board, the members of the commission, present all those different alternatives and talk through each one. And essentially what we're trying to get to is a neighborhood plan in different treatments that everybody reaches consensus on. We have successfully done that a couple of times. In fact, I mean, listen, I've heard all the different sides of the Arden thing. But from the people on Arden, for the most part, they're happy. But the people that were using Arden that don't live on Arden aren't happy. So to me, that it's been successful. because that was the idea. They actually had a volume problem, not necessarily a speed problem. So the idea on that one was to create all of these little annoyances along the way to just add just hopefully enough time that we can kick 12 to 15% of the people to keep them out on Beverly. So that was the goal of that plan. Well, we talked through every single piece of that. It could have just been speed humps. It could have just been one speed hump, could have been two, could have been three. It ended up all three. Could have been a traffic circle or no traffic circle. Every one of those things was considered individually. The neighborhood reached a consensus, traffic board recommended it, and then we went through the whole process again with presenting that to the commission. Multiple discussions, and then it ultimately was funded as the whole project.
How did you monitor consensus? Was it an actual vote?
Basically, yeah, it pretty much an informal vote just through the discussions. Yeah, there were a few people who were a little bit like, I like all of this stuff except this, but I don't want to hold the whole thing up. Let's go with all of it. They didn't want to be the one sticking the spoke of getting it to the next step. So that's the process today. And then ultimately, this board would make a recommendation. Again, it would go to the commission. The commission has multiple choices in the process. They can approve the plan, but not fund it. They can say, yes, we really like this plan, but we don't have it in the funding, so we'll just keep it on the list over here for some time in the future. They can fund it in full. They can approve it, amend it. They can take pieces of it out and approve it. They can approve pieces of it as temporary, like Commissioner Flynn was saying, there's some temporary treatments you can do. Or they could just say, we don't like any of it, go back to the mobility board. I haven't seen that happen. The few plans that I've been involved with that have gone through have made their way through, and the commission has funded them either the following year or within 2 years. And then that's really the process. So I know there was discussion at the last meeting about, hey, we know what needs to be done. You could do this next week. But there's a whole lot of people that need to be considered, not just the residents, but Rudy and Public Works. There was a lot of discussion about the impacts to his ability to plow the traffic circle and with the little pedestrian island and overlook and, I mean, fire trucks and being able to get through an emergency response time. So the neighborhoods are going, yeah, we don't want anybody coming through, but Public Works and safety and everybody's going, well, we have to get through. So there are a whole lot of things that have to be discussed through this process, which is why it is a little bit of a lengthy process. Arden was a little longer than most because they just started the process and we had our scoping meeting right before COVID hit. So it pretty much sat for 18 months to 2 years before we even collect baseline data. So take 2 years out of that 4-year process. But but holistically, again, thinking about all these things, I'm proud of it just as a traffic engineer because a lot of the past things that have been done in a lot of other communities, their policies are really simple and they just say, you qualify, and if you qualify, we'll put speed humps in. Like they pretty much limit it to just speed humps everywhere. You'll see in the list that I have on here, like the plans that we've implemented have a lot of those treatments that are in the traffic calming handbooks. I think a lot of engineers just go, that's a pain. Let's just keep it easy. We'll put a couple speed humps in and everybody will be happy. So like traffic circles and the little pedestrian island and changing the radius down at Beverly and Arden, like those are expensive things. They cost a little bit more, but they're also very impactful. So we want to go to the next slide. Go ahead to the next one. I already went through that one. So the neighbors that have plans in, so you'll see the first two, those were implemented by the previous consultant. New Bern got 2 speed humps and Mapleton got 3. Then you'll see my 2. All kinds of good stuff. 1 speed hump, and then we did transverse pavement markings, which again, it's all of these things combined that we're trying to have the effect of either slowing traffic down or having it be such a nuisance that they stay out on the main roads, right? That's the objective. So transverse pavement markings are really inverted rumble strips. So instead of digging into the asphalt, you're just stacking up thermoplastic pavement markings. So when you drive over, it's a very subtle, it just gets that feel. So if you're not paying attention, you go, oh, I just drove over something. Suddenly I'm paying attention again. Lane narrowing edge lines. So this is one of those things where we had a 24-foot wide roadway on Sleepy Hollow between the curbs. You only really need on a residential street 10 or 11-foot lanes, 10 and a half foot lanes for 2-way traffic comfortably. So all we did was we painted lines inside a foot or a foot and a half inside of the curb lines. And all it does is visually for a driver, you don't really drive on the white line or over it, so just squeeze them a little bit closer together. Again, the whole idea, just slow them down a little bit, put the transverse pavement markings in. And then they had really big radii at Brafferton and Old Farm and at Sleepy Hollow, like, so you could really just, you could make that right turn at 15 miles per hour comfortably. So we squeezed those down and made those tight, so you literally had to slow down almost to a stop to make your right turns. And then we slapped one speed hump in there. And then Arden Road, you've seen all those, there's a series of speed humps, and then the geometric modifications at Arden Beverly. Again, the folks on the lower half of Arden down where you're coming off of Beverly, all those folks there, they were like, well, it's too steep for a speed hump, so there wasn't really much we could do. The biggest issue down there was people coming up Beverly, since it's such a slight turn, they're a shot put up the road. So we basically cut that whole corner off and made it a 90-degree turn. And just to go back up, so all the people down at the bottom of the hill, the people on the corner, they were just closing their eyes to back out of their driveway before, so. Those are the people that were most impacted, and the people that have come and said, I used to go through there and it's such a pain now, and I say, yeah, good. Why did you do that? I go, that's why we did it.
You did your job.
So those are the four that I just and then Orchard, I didn't put on here because I ran out of room, but there's a speed hump or two. Rudy's crew is gonna be reinstalling some of the transverse pavement markings that were initially installed with that plan. We put some other stop signs and yield signs in there. That neighborhood previously had that plan. Like I said, they came back and essentially said a lot of the stuff either has worn away or hasn't been maintained. So we're just beefing up what was already in place. Next one. And now here's the three, go back one, sorry. Oh, you are, okay. Yeah, then these are the other two. So we talked about this policy. These are two specifically like Hoodridge and Rockwood. If you were familiar with that intersection previously, coming up out of Castle Shannon on Woodridge, when you got to Rockwood, so Rockwood itself, if you came up Rockwood and made a left turn, or if you were coming on Hoodridge towards Castle Shannon, made a right turn on Rockwood, there was a really large, like 100-foot long radius there. Like I think the road used to just be a 90-degree bend. And there was no stop sign there. So it was basically just you could just drive 25 miles per hour. It made the crosswalk 100 feet long to cross Rockwood. They came in with a petition, speed data was collected, didn't exceed the thresholds, speeds were collected, they didn't exceed it by 7 miles per hour, so they didn't qualify. But the neighborhood was persistent, they got the commissioner from their ward behind them, ultimately got a project funded. And that same thing that we did at Sleepy Hollow and Old Farm and Brafferton, where we shrunk those radii down. We made it a real T intersection and matched that radius in the corner. So now the crossing's only 30 feet. And we put new ADA ramps and we marked the crosswalks. And so that was one that sometimes the data, the petition and the screening data doesn't really tell the whole story. You could tell by being out there and watching people, crossing with strollers at 100 feet and cars parked around that radius and the speeds the cars were going. You could tell it was uncomfortable and wasn't safe, but the policy didn't tell you that if you just collected screening data. So sometimes there are neighborhoods and areas that do need that improvement and safety improvement that don't quite fit into the policy. And then the other one is going to be constructed this summer at Cedar Boulevard, Salem and Hollycrest. A little bit of an unorthodox intersection with Hollycrest as a one-way out. It's real wide there. You got some weird pavement marked hatchings in the middle, and Salem's a boulevard type of a roadway. So there's a whole lot going on. You got a horizontal curve and Cedar that creates a little bit of kind of looking back over your shoulder sightline issues. So we went through a process last year with traffic board and then the commission, come up with a project there. I'll send a plan to you guys. It's going to be constructed this summer. That will include setting new curb lines, narrowing that road, squeezing the intersection down. The crossing is going to shrink by about 15 feet, the painted crossing, new ADA ramps on everything, all new pavement markings and signs coming into it. So you've seen some treatments on some of the state roads where they're paint the white plus on the road, 2 of them, meaning, hey, I'm approaching an intersection. So we'll have those leading up to the intersection. We'll have yield line pavement markings, the little triangles at the crosswalk, and then Public Works purchased those push button activated solar powered edge lit flashing light pedestrian sign. So any pedestrian that comes on, pushes that, they flash, just like the one out on. The only difference between the one on Washington Road and what will be here is this one's gonna have little LED lights around the edge of the sign instead of the two flashing, real fast flashing lights. So it'll be a much,
both.
yeah. Oh, actually, we did it for
Yeah,
both,
we
yeah,
did
so it'll
both
be,
sides,
yeah, it'll
both
be
sides.
RFB and on both sides. So if you're crossing there, so I think a kid got hit on a bike last year and I think a crossing guard might have got hit a couple of years ago, so it's been on a lot of people's radar, so we're hoping this one is gonna really bring attention to when you're driving through there, that there's a lot of activity going.
How much are those signs, those crosswalks?
That particular one was about $20,000 for the whole setup. Yeah, that doesn't include installation, that's just the devices themselves. But they're solar powered, they're battery powered, solar.
Yeah, I mean, that's the poles, that's the push buttons, that's the signs, that's the solar
Right.
power, the controller, it's everything except they'll have to put foundation in,
Concrete
put
foundation.
them on and then they're
Don't
self-sustaining.
even have to wire them, they talk to each other Bluetooth, I think it is.
But you gotta wire from the solar panel to the.
Oh, to the
Yeah,
battery.
yeah, there's no overhead wiring or anything, it's all
I really like
self-contained.
the.
Yeah.
the places. Really useful. Especially on Bower Hill. Anyways, I know we're not going down that. So 20,000, okay.
Next slide. Oh, now these are the three neighborhoods that are gonna be coming through this board. So Morrison, they had a petition maybe 18 months ago, screening data was collected. They did have their neighborhood scoping meeting and we've collected base data. So we're kind of in that, what are our options phase? Scrubgrass, same things. We've collected our data. We've had a scoping meeting. We have our baseline data. We're coming up with those alternatives. This is one that I think Commissioner Flynn and this board really could be interested in because it is very wide. It's 30 feet wide. And essentially, if you turn on from Cochrane and you're going down, the double yellow lines are pushed to the left. So the side that the sidewalk is on and that really all the homes are on there's really a parking lane there that's not delineated and that nobody uses because they all have their own driveway. So there might be a car or a contractor one day, but for the most part, it's an 18-foot wide from the double yellow to the curve, straight from when you pass the stop sign there. So they're, just for comparison, this posted speed limit on that road's 25. The 85th percentile speeds from two locations of the ATRs and from the spot speed studies, 37 miles per hour. So 12 miles per hour over the post, because it's 18 feet wide, there's no obstructions and there's no stop signs, so you have the feeling as a driver, you'll go as fast as you can comfortably go, regardless of the speed limit. That's what studies really show. So now the idea is what can we do here to make this the kind of road that everybody's talking about? And then Salem is a new one, so they only presented their petition earlier this year. They did the screening data. No, we're going to be collecting the screening data, and then we still have to have the neighborhood meeting, so this board will get that entire process.
And that's a different part of Salem than.
Yeah, so that's really just, once you get out of the little boulevard section at the bottom, it's the rest of it going up to Bower Hill. That's also a relatively wide road and, especially at the bottom there where it becomes the boulevard, it's kind of a big sea of asphalt where everything comes together, so. So for that one, we're shooting to collect some data in May, in this month.
No, I didn't say anything.
I think that's all I have. Is there, my next slide just questions? No, next slide, it's everything I just went through, summary, and now questions.
So now this is a very formal process, very specific, although the commissioner or other parts of the municipality could recommend, right? I mean, it's not just because neighbors said, right? So these things could happen without this policy or.
So essentially, like I was saying, the Hood Ridge and Rockwood
Mhm.
happened exclusive of this policy. They started with this policy.
Okay, I see.
Didn't meet the thresholds, but through further conversations and persistence and getting a commissioner on board, it became a project. Same thing with Cedar, Salem, Holy Crest. There was no petition for it. But it became a safety project, a safety improvement project.
The trigger is usually a resident contacting
Yeah.
us, with an issue, or there's an event, someone is unfortunately hit or something, a near miss, things like that, so. That's usually the trigger, if that's your question.
Is that data public if somebody gets hit? Is that?
Actually, there's a website that you can go on for, public information. It's Pennsylvania, I think Pennsylvania has that.
Yeah.
There's a,
PCIT tool.
Yeah.
it was at,
It won't really give it won't give you the specifics, like you can't get the crash report, but it'll give you,
what
you can
happened
look
and
for
when.
the influence of an intersection and it'll list the date, the time, and if it was light or dark or adverse weather conditions, but it won't really say, you know,
Right.
you're not gonna get that 3 or 4 page police report that has.
Yeah, that data is reportable crashes.
Yeah,
So that's
correct.
when somebody gets injured
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
car needs to be towed. It's not the minor fender benders that are
Right.
just an insurance exchange type
Yeah.
incidents.
As a general rule, I think the policy framework that's here is very robust. Again, as a commissioner, right, when when residents say, we hate our street, people go too fast. My default is, yeah, I feel, yeah, I'm with you. But there's got to be a process, right? I
Yeah.
can't just go on your, the emotional reaction, right? I as an elected need that backstop, right, to have a process in place. So I think this framework is very robust. I think, the framework that's here is good. Can it evolve? You betcha. Can we add tactical urbanism to it? Sure, right? Again, so we've got a framework. It's not set in stone. This is the process that past boards have adopted. Do we want to reconsider it and evolve it to meet this next generation need? That's up to you guys. I'm happy to help. But it's a good process, right? And I think, it serves us all very well, again, because this stuff costs a lot of money, all right? And we can't just throw money at every problem. So we have to be thoughtful and have some framework to approach this. But how do we build on this policy, right? Because again, ultimately staff have to kind of take all this stuff that's coming in all the time and have some mechanism to go, okay, wait a minute, we gotta move this stuff forward and have a rational way to do it. So I
And make
think
residents feel like they have a process as well, and they have a.
100%.
They're not just calling up and putting it on your desk and, oh, they never listen.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. I would love to see frankly, an even more robust process to engage residents in that street dialogue. Just Rudy, cover your ears. I would frankly love to see this process for any time we are planning to reconstruct a street. Right, look, we're gonna tear out your street and rebuild it. So, and it's coming in 4 years. We're gonna go through this process. Maybe you say, no, the street's fine. Okay, we'll put it back the way it was, but maybe not. And what better time to think about it than when we are completely reconstructing the street, right? So again, these are all things that are potentially different triggers for instituting the policy and going through the process. The policy is what it is today.
So just as an example to what you're saying, the lower half of Arden from North Meadowcroft to Beverly was completely reconstructed 3 or 4 years ago. So right at the beginning of when Arden started to go through this process, so it already was completely reconstructed down at Beverly, and then this project came through and reconstructed the bottom of it. So maybe it does make sense to have those discussions when you know a street reconstruction is coming 3, 4, 5 years from now. Even if it is just making a change to the geometry of a roadway, where you kind of know that it's not how you would design it today, because it happened 70 years ago.
Either way, it's part of the process, though.
Sure.
It's gonna be a factor on what we do, how extensively we do it.
Do we know that, what streets are up for
We
reconstruction?
typically project those out about 5 years, yeah. We take a hard look at, take a hard look at the first probably 2 years that we have prioritized based on the evaluations of pavement and the streets themselves. And there's a couple of programs that we have, as Commissioner Flynn said, brick restoration, mill and pave, which is just a maintenance process, and then total reconstruction where we dig everything up, new drainage, new curbs, new everything. But that has to fit into the budget too. So, we kind of back into that number, if you will, and we might take a piece of one street that's, $150,000, and all those pieces of the puzzle have to fit together, physically and also financially, so that we get our number and make that work, our projected numbers.
Do we coordinate with that with the utilities?
Yes, they're notified in advance, yes.
So that you can kind of figure out if they're
Yeah, we try to
take
work.
advantage of it.
We-
I know it doesn't always happen.
No, but we've done a lot of that, and we've teamed up and co-op with them, and there's been instances where they've gone in, this year we have two streets, Mapleton is one and, Oregon Trail is the other. Utilities came in last year, they put new gas lines in, and we just had them do like a temporary repair. Mapleton's a concrete street, and we're gonna reconstruct that. Since they didn't have to spend money on, restoration, they offered to participate in our reconstruction of that street. Now, we would have probably waited a couple more years to rebuild that street, but it was on our list.
Yeah.
So we bumped it up to the top because now we're basically getting a discount. They're participating financially. And they didn't, it's lower than their cost would have been to repair that or restore it. But we benefit because now it costs us less to completely rebuild it and we get it done the way we want it, so.
I would say
Win-win.
Rudy's team does an amazing job of like saving us all money, big time, right? The amount of streets we get done and improved because they go through this process and they're very diligent about it is huge compared to most communities. So they get all the kudos in the world.
What we hate more is to see, you know, them come in the year after we rebuild a street and rip it up, because it wastes everybody's time and money. I mean, you've already got.
Residents too.
Exactly. It's twice as much aggravation, so.
We talk to residents, like knock on doors. Okay.
I do.
This presentation's on SharePoint that we can go back over it. Or
Yeah, I think, did
I don't
we
think
say?
it's in there yet.
I'll save it in there.
I didn't see it in there
We'll
yet.
share it
Might
over
be
there.
wrong, but it's-
We'll share it. I'll put it in the folder.
So there are no action items on this at this point, right? This was just informational. Yep. But as the board, you guys can consider whatever actions you want to take. So if you want to pick it up and research it, bring it back, you have that ability.
And the mechanism for having the meetings, will they be part of these meetings or are they separate public meetings? Do you?
Separate.
Okay. So we'll participate, but they're not on our agenda.
Usually on site too, right, Mike?
No, we were doing them in the commission chamber.
Oh, commission chambers, okay.
Okay.
Do you publicly advertise those as well, or no? Just with the neighborhood, so it's not part of this
So we
board.
don't-
It's-
We would be there in the
They're public.
capacity just to listen.
That's-
We're not there
Correct.
to
Yeah.
ask questions.
You're invited. I think one or two of the traffic board members came to the meetings.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there a public notice that?
Yeah, so what we do is we figure out the date and the time that we can have that room. And then about 10 days beforehand, we send a letter from the municipality to every resident on that street and every resident on a property that kind of abuts that street.
Oh, nice.
So we had a pretty good turnout for Scrubgrass.
So what you were saying, Andrew, is to consider this, like, this policy or like maybe add to it or change or whatever, like that's what we should take. into
Well, you can,
consideration.
right, again, I think it's a good policy for what was created. It can be updated, right? Can we put it in the context of like the tactical urbanism and wrap in other concepts? Think about the speeds, yeah, we can, right? Again, the board can, I wouldn't do this piecemeal. It's one of those exercises where I'd say if you all were like, yeah, let's actually deep dive into this, I would say everybody piece out something, right? Do it offline, right? It's not, don't want to do this discussion here where you nitpick everything, but I would say offline discussions, right, about different areas where you'd want to see changes, make recommendations, bring something back to the board meeting to, present and discuss. And then again, just like what I was saying before, I would say your recommendation for changing a policy would be, this is our recommendation for changes. It would go to commission. Commission would say, we like the direction. Okay, staff, please take this as, direct, right? Staff is here, right? They're hearing, but they're not taking action until, right? Commission says, yeah, we want to go down this path. Because even commission can't direct staff to do work. the manager has to direct. So again, we have to respect that they've got their day job, right? And they have capacity issues. So again, we take these steps. Commission says, yes, prioritize it. And manager then says, okay, based upon everything that's going on, Rudy, when can you get to this, right? And it'll be like, okay, in 6 months, we'll pull this together. And that's the process, right? We need to go through. That way, again, we are moving the structural process forward, but hopefully improving it, right? Because again, if we change this policy, right, this thing's been in there for 12 years, right? If I change it and improve it, right, it's going to impact the next how many streets,
Right.
rather than just trying to fight over the one that we're talking about right now.
I think this is the reason that the subcommittee thing was written into the policy as well for the board. So I think this is specifically one of those instances where that would come into play.
Yes. Yes, thank you for reminding me. That was one of those reasons why, yeah, when we were going through all the bylaws and restructuring the boards, the idea of having a subcommittee, right, of this board, right? Again, you want to go review policy. We all want to sit here and do this, you know,
Here,
for
we
5
don't wanna do
hours,
it yet.
every
So it's a
once a
breakup
month. No,
subcommittee that would be
Yeah.
passionate about this project that could come back, present to this board and then.
right. And if there are other residents who are interested, you know, floating around, yeah, who want to be a part of a subcommittee, there is nothing stopping that, right? If there are other people who want to engage, right, in that process, they are very much welcome to. It is your subcommittee, as long as the president or chair or vice chair are informed, at least at a cursory level. And again, documentation, communications include staff and commissions, so we understand what's happening. It's not happening offline per se, but it is definitely, you know, you guys want to go sit and meet at the library and have 10 people hang out and shoot breeze, talk about. Cool.
Did
Okay.
we form any subcommittees yet, or we did?
Not yet, not.
Do you know if any others did, or?
Oh, yes. Yes, the civil, or the.
So are
not
we a
civil
little
service.
behind, is what you're saying?
No, not at all, not at all.
Somebody, sounds like somebody's really far ahead.
Well, yeah,
They had a chair and a vice chair last month too.
yeah. Yeah, no, the Civic Engagement Board is basically a rollover from the Community Relations Board. So there was a lot of legacy activity that was already underway. Again, we will do traffic, traffic hearings,
Oh,
parking.
the parking ticket.
Parking.
Well, that's what I was just gonna actually ask,
Yeah.
is that might make a subcommittee.
Yes,
Because obviously we rolled some of that into this board.
Yes,
So,
Aaron volunteered to do April, so that was one of the things on my
yeah,
list for Mark, to
I.
make sure that we have someone moving forward. I don't know if you want to, since you didn't do any, maybe you could do another month.
Were there none?
Yeah, I inundated her all this.
I'm more than happy to do another month.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, so that, again, that could be a subcommittee, right? So again, it's allowing you guys hopefully some structure and context to say, look, you know, I know there's only so much capacity here.
So do we make a motion for that, I would assume? So we
Yes.
would make a motion
to,
to start a subcommittee
create.
for, okay.
Uh,
Do we need?
Well, not for parking, I think we're
For,
okay, but for like a policy review.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to do, right, if you guys want to create a subcommittee, then yeah, you can make a motion. Don't have to do it right away, right? You could guys think about this, right? I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Think about it. Next month, you can say, okay, let's create this, that, or the other.
I suggest, yeah, maybe going back and reading what's in the actual
Yeah.
policy
Yeah,
manual.
getting
for
all
the
that.
board. Right, so you have an idea and concept on the structure of what you're volunteering to do.
And I'll send a PDF of that traffic calming handbook to put on the
That'd be great.
SharePoint as well. It's. I've read the whole
So it's like,
thing.
but it's,
Might not like-
you're using it as the companion piece to the policy.
Yeah, it's like, this was the handbook that PennDOT put out just as a guide for municipalities to go, what do we do? People keep asking for traffic calming. It's just kind of a, kind of go through this process.
But it's kind of like a menu of.
It is, absolutely. You can flip through and it'll say, here's all the different treatments you can consider. It lists advantages and disadvantages
If
and.
PennDOT doesn't like them, they're in there.
Yeah. Yep.
If we move on to the last item, it's just the announcement of the next meeting date and time, which is for the Mobility and Transportation Board, Tuesday, June 4th at 6 p.m. And a Zoom is an option too.
Can I give one update too, just
Yep.
briefly? Work is progressing on the south garage over here. Tomorrow, actually, the ramp is gonna close from Washington Road to the garage. We're gonna open up the secondary entrance from, Florida Avenue up, Municipal Way into the third floor. So all traffic up and down will up, will go into the back of the garage and then proceed through there. And then there will be some parking on levels 1 and 2, right, Mark? It'll be selective or?
What we're doing is, there'll be some, parking above the third level. While we have manpower to allow for two-way traffic and a one-way garage. So the idea is that we take, long-term parking that comes early in the morning, is gonna be there all day to limit the interaction at that pinch point at the third floor entrance. So we'll have, parking above there, usually permit holders, employees, long-term, and the Washington Square residents. Majority of the traffic transient, we're going to direct down through the normal traffic flow from the third level down. And so we're probably gonna lose about 120 spaces, about a third of the garage. So, but, we've been doing, I did some car counts prior, and we've never had max capacity over 200. So, we'll, any given day, could be a school event or something that we may push it and the garage may be full, but I think if we utilize with the staffing and utilize as much of the space as available, we should not have a problem with that garage filling. So, that's our hopes.
This will be in place for about 3 to 4 weeks, probably. That's the estimate right now, so. And pedestrians won't be able to cross the bridge either. They'll have to go through the secondary bridge over at Citizens, and go.
The southwest
Right.
stairwell between Citizens and Washington
There'll
Square.
be signage and so forth directing them there, and there'll be barricades blocking them from going on the bridge here, so. And then, suppose anything else. Seth had sent an email, asking as well about the, planned, active transportation plan. We are doing that in collaboration with Dormont, and Dormont's not prepared to do that. To some extent, we're not either. So this is a multi-municipal plan. Funding is in place for both municipalities. That will be kicking off later on, this summer. Ian McMeans will be the lead on that. There will be, members of the board that will participate in that as a review of the RFP that's going to be put out for that. And the responses that come back too, so. Probably, I would say, talking to Ian, probably 2 months, somewhere in that time frame, but we'll keep you posted along the way. And then, just a couple brief, quick things, our staff planted some grasses that are a little taller in that Hardin McCann Island. We were getting complaints about vehicles that were driving directly over it pretty frequently. It was just grass. It was just grass planted in there last year, so we put signs in there, and then we got complaints about the big ugly signs that were there, so we pulled those out. And now we have grasses that are gonna get about a foot tall. If they run them over, they won't kill them. We mulched around those, so hopefully that'll give us some depth perception. If they're running through there now, they're doing it intentionally, we know it for sure. We installed new crosswalks and signage on Sunset at Jonquil. That was a holdover from the previous board, the traffic board. We also installed some lane use signage on Greenhurst, and approach to Bar Hill. We had a concerned motorist that, contacted us, and those weren't really defined, and there were some issues there with cars that would take the wrong lane, basically, instead of going over to Seagar and to the emergency room. So we defined those with signage, and we also put a divider line at 100 feet. So that's all buttoned up. That's all I have.
How recently was the lane delineation changed over
Up in
on?
Greenhurst?
Yeah.
About a week ago.
Okay. I actually remember riding my bike to the hospital a couple months ago, and I was like, "What the heck is which lane is the correct?" Okay,
Yeah. So it's you will know now.
Okay, great.
I'm gonna share around this article. I'll send it electronically, even though I like my paper, but my son said, "Mom, check this out. This was the Wall Street Journal children need neighborhoods where they can walk and bike. It's really cool. It's a, you know, pretty straightforward, but it's up to the communities to make this happen. So I'll share it with you guys. It was a good one. All right, anything else? All right, a motion.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you. Guys.
Good job, guys.